Hey guys, what's up? So yeah, this is a short video that's about creating artificial roadways and jumps in GTA Online Creator. About things like this, you can see this is an artificial road way up in the sky, and the block that's used to create these roads, you might have seen quite a few of these all over the place. It's the same block every time. It's called a floating platform. It's designed to be like floated on the sea. But if you turn it upside down, you get this orange surface that's ideal for making artificial roadways and big jumps and stuff. You can see it's nice and big. In fact, it's probably the biggest prop that's available. And you can make quite sizable areas with it. I think it took about 80 of them to make this track. And the difficulty with working with this block is getting the blocks lined up so that they create a reasonably flat surface that doesn't have lots of bumps and kinks in it. So that's what this video is going to show you. Okay, so let me exit out of this and I'll create a new one so I can show you. Now, before you can create any props in a race, you have to do some basic things. You have to set the trigger, and you have to create a starting grid, but you can just create anything, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now we can add some props. Now, first thing I'm going to show you is how to use this prop to create a jump. So here's the prop I'm talking about, floating platform. Okay, now this is what it looks like by default. It's designed to float on the sea, but if you change its orientation, turn it upside down, then you get this. Now you can't help but have noticed then, if I move away from it, it starts to disappear. The draw distance on this road surface is quite low. There isn't really much you can do about that, it's just the way it is. But it's sometimes worth bearing in mind if you wanted to use it to create, like I used this block to create a maze once. The fact that you can see through it means that it limited how large some of the areas could be, because the block's transparent, you can see through the maze, it makes it easier. Anyway, okay, so if we're just creating simple jumps, they're relatively straightforward. So you've got your block here, we push it down as far as it can go. Now if I start to rotate it, you can see it starts to disappear into the ground. The key point is the middle of it. You can see where those two little purple arrows are. You can't, the middle of a prop can't intersect with another prop, but any other part of the prop can. So I could roll it like this and it can go all the way around here. I can raise it up and I can lower it, but I can't go further than the center. That's worth bearing in mind because it affects how close together props can be. So you can see here, okay, so we've got a nice simple ramp. It's nothing complicated. You can change its orientation, you can change its pitch angle, get the angle we want. The thing that happens now is, how do we line up the next one? So here's the thing to do. First of all, make sure you're looking at it in this direction, so that where you're aiming at is, where you're going towards is in front of you. Now you move the camera so it's as low down as you can. If I zoom out, you can see you can move the camera all these different angles. You can have it so it's looking straight down. In this case you want it so it's as far ahead as it can be. Okay, now raise the prop up a little bit. Now as we push it down, you can see there's the gap, there's the point where the two props intersect. So we want it to be at least far enough across that it covers that gap. So there, that's enough. You can see that was the point where it meets. What you could do is use those two little brown lines at the end, kind of aim with those, but you've got a fair bit of leeway. Now the problem you have is that when you're trying to line them up, the control to moving them up and down are just clicking the left and right sticks, and you can't get it accurate. You get it close and then you go too far. It's really annoying trying to use these, but if you use the pitch angle to tweak its position, then you don't have that problem. So let me show you here. So I use the stick just to move it down just a little bit at a time and say, okay, I'm fairly close there. So that's probably as close as I can get with the pitch angle. Now with the sticks. So now if I tweak the pitch angle, now can you see that moving it is opening and closing that gap. So you just tweak it a tiny bit and watch the black line in the middle. You'll see how as we get closer it becomes dotted and then it eventually disappears entirely. The point at which it disappears entirely is the point at which the blocks are as level as they possibly can be. Now, you may never get it exactly right, so what you need to bear in mind is that whenever you have to err on one side or the other, you always err on the side of creating a crack away from the direction of travel. So if I had a crack like this, as the car approaches it, it creates a bump. It might make them jump a little bit, or if they hit it at a funny angle, it'll make them spin out. So you want to avoid that. So if you can't get it exactly right, you make sure that the gap is on the other side. You can see there, that's quite a pronounced gap. You wouldn't want it really that big. And using this pitch tweak, you can get it quite close. The thing to look for always is the dotted line, to watch that solid line and see how it becomes a dotted line and then eventually disappears. That point, just as it's disappeared, that's when you know they're perfectly in line. So then you press X to place the block, and you can see now I've got a nice smooth surface for it. Now you can keep going again. So you get another block, kind of line it up roughly, and then you use the pitch angle to just tweak it into position like that. Because if I create another checkpoint, I can show you that in practice. See, nice smooth jump, no bumps or kinks, which is just what you want. Okay, now the other thing you can do with this is creating artificial roadways. Now this becomes a little more difficult because, well, when you're creating a ramp, if there's a slight angle difference between each one, it doesn't really matter. If we look at it from the side, well, you can't really see it because the difference is so small, but when you're creating a long flat surface with maybe a dozen or more of these, if each of one of them is at a slightly different angle, overall you find that the whole track goes slightly upwards or slightly downwards. That might not be desirable. So the thing to do basically is basically the same, but you just make sure that you reset your orientation each time. Now it's it's incredibly helpful to have a reference object to measure against. So here I'm going to use this building. So this building is my straight line. I'm looking straight down now. This is the easiest way to set the initial orientation of object, and you can see I'm comparing it against the edge of the building, so that I know if I just tweak the world heading a bit, I can know that I'm basically about right. Okay, that's about right. Now I'm going to come against it here. You might notice, by the way, as you move an object against the edge of a building, it starts to move upwards. That's again because the very centre of the object can't intersect another object, and so what it does as a result is move it. This kind of stickiness, if you want, can be quite a useful way of positioning objects against each other, but I digress. Okay, so we're on the roof now, so now we want to turn it upside down, and we turn it here, and again we measure it against, I'll measure it against that grey line, bring the camera as far down as I can, measure, just move it so it's about equal, and then just tweak the pitch angle until it's, yeah, I'd say that's about it. Okay, so now I'm ready to create my first road block. So here's my road block. Let's say it's here. Now you want to create the next one. You get close to the object again. You get it so that you covered the gap just about. There we go. We get as close as you can. Okay, that actually got pretty close. Now tweak the pitch angle again, looking for the line. When the line disappears, there you go. That's as good as we get. Now I didn't have to tweak the pitch very much this time, so let's just go straight on and do the next one. Okay. And then tweak the pitch until the line disappears. Okay, now I had to move that a fair bit this time, so in order to avoid what I was talking about before of this gradual angling of the whole roadway, the thing to do now is come back to your reference object, get it in a good position, and readjust it so we're back to the straight line. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. Then come back up to our roadway and carry on to place the next block. And that's basically all there is to it. You can keep going as far as you want. Now if you want to turn corners, you may find that the angle starts to, if your block isn't perfectly straight, you might find that the line disappears at different points. Hang on, let me give you an example. If I tweak that slightly, let's say I haven't got the orientation quite right, so it's slightly leaning, or maybe you even want the track to be slightly leaning. Now when I go and adjust its world heading, so make it start turning a corner, push it down. Now when it comes to thing, you see how the line starts to disappear and then doesn't, and then it's like halfway there and halfway there, you see. So if you find yourself in that situation, you can either adjust the roll and do it that way, or if you can't adjust the roll, if you've got a piece that you want that's rolling to one side and it's turning a corner, then that angle is going to be inevitable. So again, if you find yourself in that situation, just err on the side of making sure that the gaps appear away from the driver, not towards them. So if I just leave it like that, there's going to be that little bump on the left hand side. So you just angle it enough so that all the bump is on the far side of the block, and then the driver will feel a bump, but it won't cause them to spin out. There you go.